So my name is Chantrell Nielsen, and this is Scott Rubel and Professor Rob Cross, and we will be going through a couple things today. We'll each take turns speaking, and we'd love to hear questions, and we'll also save some time at the end for questions and answers. So what we're going to cover, I'll do a quick introduction and kind of talk to you about where we're coming from and the products that we're talking about. And then Rob is going to present to us some of the research that he's done that was featured in the cover of Harvard Business Review last year on kind of the overload problem that people are facing in the modern workplace. Then I'm going to show you some work that we did together with Macy's to help solve this problem for them. And then Scott's going to talk to you about what the direction that the workplace analytics and my analytics products are going in the next several months in order to address this problem. So just some background. I've been at Microsoft for about 2 years. This is my first time coming to Ignite. And the reason that I came to Microsoft was because they acquired my company. It was a startup, and we were called Volumetrics. And the reason that Volumetrics was founded was because we wanted to figure out this problem of understanding knowledge work. And knowledge work is really hard to understand. There's different ways that people kind of define what knowledge work means. But the definition that we use for working purposes is that it's characterized by non-routine work and cognitive work. And so non-routine means that you're not consistently doing the same process over and over again. That makes it really hard to measure. And similarly, cognitive work means you're not necessarily creating some physical output, and so that also makes it super hard to measure. It's taking place in people's heads. But nevertheless, there's a tremendous opportunity because knowledge work is incredibly important in the modern economy. So this chart is from the Wall Street Journal, and this is showing just the growth in the number of jobs over the last 20 or so years. And you can see that knowledge work is the biggest portion of the economy. It's also the growing the fastest. And this is just showing count of jobs. So if you were to think more about the value created by jobs or the types of jobs that are really competitive and are well paid, then I think that the difference would be even more stark. So there's a huge opportunity to actually understand knowledge work. And the insight that the founders of Volumetrics had was that there is actually a ton of data available about knowledge work. It just happens to be locked up and inaccessible to us. And that data is because when we are doing knowledge work, we are using digital tools nearly all the time. So when we're sending email, when we're using our calendars to schedule our meetings, when we're doing documents or in chat, or using workflow tools, we're creating a bunch of digital signals. Some people call this like digital exhaust. That's all being left behind just as a byproduct of doing our work. So we don't have to ask as many questions. We don't have to use as many subjective methods of gathering data to understand knowledge work if we access this data. And so we spent several years kind of pioneering, kind of figuring out how to access this data and making it real for specific companies, like 10,000 or so knowledge workers at a time we do for a big company. Microsoft happens to have an enormous data set of this stuff. So in Office 365, they made us count. There have been, at the time when we made this box, 4 trillion emails sent in Office 365. Probably so, I guess it's more now, but I don't know how many more exactly. There's about 1 billion meetings created every month with Office 365. We have over 100 million active users per month, and that's across 123 countries, all industries, all different types of work that's being done in Office 365. So all of these signals are being used. They're literally unprecedented in the world today kind of data set about how work gets done. The identity, of course, of every organization and their privacy is protected, but in the aggregate, this tells us something brand new that economists and labor economists and productivity experts have never been able to fully understand about the world before. And so we're also making it into products. And so the products are called Workplace Analytics and My Analytics. Workplace Analytics helps you understand the whole organization. My Analytics helps you understand your own personal data. So how Workplace Analytics works, first of all, we take native Office 365 data. Primarily, we focus on email and calendar, because from email and calendar alone, we get a signal of about 20 hours per person per week on average of time use data, with no effort at all from the person. And so we pull this data, we de-identify it and aggregate it so that you're not ever looking at one person's specific data, but you're looking at trends about your whole organization. And because we don't have we're not trying to look at one person's specific data. We're looking at the organization. We need to bring in organizational context. So we'll bring in an HR file that helps us to understand the roles and levels and departments and functions and geographies of the whole organization. So we're creating this map that's the true org chart, the true social network, and the true time use of the entire organization. And then we'll often bring in metadata about the people surrounding the organization. So who are our customers, who are channel partners, who are our supply chain partners, who are the vendors that are helping to create value, so the whole ecosystem around the customer. So with that, you've got this enormous amount of data about your organization that you never had before, and you can see all of the patterns that are happening across the organization. The next step, for most organizations, it's different for every company, but we like to use some type of business outcome data or an interim kind of a person outcome. So we'll look at things like performance ratings, engagement scores, all different types of survey scores. For salespeople, we'll get their quota attainment. For customers, we'll get their net promoter score, their satisfaction, or their revenue or gross margin that's being generated by them. For different projects, we'll get success and failure and outcome and on-time delivery. And so if you have these other standalone sources of data, then you have all of this behavioral data that can start to predict those outcomes so that you have this visibility well in advance that helps you to be able to know what's coming in your business. And then so the job that I've had over the last several years has been about taking this new data set and helping to apply it to all different types of business problems. And it's a super exciting thing to do, to take this data that's never been used before for a problem that's been solved a traditional way and figure out how can we change the way that that problem gets solved. So the types of problems that we work on are super varied. There's physical workspace planning, there's sales operation models and selling models, there's engagement and predicting attrition and all kinds of HR applications, of course. But the one that I never really, honestly, was super excited about is this idea of collaboration overload. So this is something, we're measuring it, and you hear it every single time you talk about this data to people. People are disengaged. These statistics come from Gallup and McKinsey, but there's lots of other sources. Like you'd need only like 4 minutes to find tons of statistics like this, that people are feeling like half their time is very unproductively spent. People spend all day firefighting their email inbox without feeling like they're getting any results from that. They're interrupted constantly. They're trying to multitask, but we all know we're horrible at being productive when we're multitasking, but we can't stop ourselves. And so people are constantly complaining about this problem and feeling this problem and talking about this problem. And we talk with senior business leaders. They're very concerned about this. And my attitude, honestly, had been kind of like, suck it up, buttercup. This is not a problem that is solvable. This is just a byproduct of all the greatness we get from all of our digital tools. And it's a marathon and a sprint, and you just need to work harder. But I no longer feel that way because there's two things that have convinced me that actually this problem is solvable, and it's worth thinking about. So the first one is that it is a huge opportunity. Every business is feeling this. This collaborative overload article is Rob's article that he co-wrote with Adam Grant last year. This overcommitted organization one is the current cover of Harvard Business Review. These are gigantic problems, and the labor market is so competitive, and it matters so much to be able to really put your knowledge workers to work and to get so much productivity out of them that it is absolutely a problem that's worth addressing, because if you can make even a tiny difference, that matters very deeply at all levels of the organization. So number one, I realized that it's such a huge opportunity. And the second thing I saw is that we actually tried it with several different customers in several different ways, and we found that we were able to make a difference. And so I'll have Rob talk you through some of his research first, but then we'll come back to this, and I'll show you how Macy's went about solving this problem with us. And the basic cycle is that when you bring data, it really changes the conversation about this problem. So we're bringing in data from workplace analytics, looking top down and validating hypotheses about what might be wrong and diagnosing where the problems actually lie, so that we are having a totally different conversation about this problem than we were ever able to have before. And then we're using my analytics, this personal product where I can see my own data and my own data only, for me only, and bringing people this data that actually helps them change their behavior. We create a feedback loop with people where minor, very lightweight coaching, but actually helps them change. And we know that they can change because looking back at workplace analytics, aggregating that data and looking top down at a group, we can track the actual ROI and the time investment that is changing as a result of this. So Scott will show you some of what we're building, but first I'm really excited to introduce Rob Cross. I've been a big fan of his for years, and now I'm really excited to also call him kind of a colleague. And he's the Edward A. Madden Professor of Global Business at Babson College, and he's got 20 years of experience working with this concept of social networks that's so super exciting and really relevant to us, and has worked with over 300 leading organizations. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, the clicker.
So like Chantrell, you can tell this is my first time here too, because I'm way overdressed, right? And normally I can get away with this as a professor gear and pretty much anywhere, but I may as well be walking around in a tuxedo in this place. So I got interested in the network ideas about 20 years ago. I was running a research lab for IBM, and my early interest was really around not so much networks, but how do you design databases, knowledge management systems at the time, to replicate how we think on story-based logics and stuff like that to improve the movement of ideas across organizations. And what I continually heard every time I would go talk to people is that nobody used the databases, ultimately. You know, everybody, when they have a problem or opportunity or whatever, they're much more likely to reach out to their network to get information and answers to solve a problem. And so it got me interested in being able to, in a whole series of ways, see if you could map and get a sense of what these networks look like, what kind of different sets of insights could it give people that you care about, right? Either your groups or leaders you're supporting in different ways. And there's all sorts of cool things you can do. You can figure out who the key influencers are if you're trying to deploy a technology and get much greater uptake. You can drive change differently. But one of the things that we got really interested in, I say we, I run a consortium with these ideas of a group of about 100 companies and agencies right now, was this idea of overload and seeing how and where people are just flat out overwhelmed today with different kinds of collaborative demands. And as we looked at our databases, you know, we have over 1,000 of these data sets over about a 20-year period, you can start to see the accumulation of the degree to which the collaborative intensity of work has shot up, right? And it's not just email, right? It's a product of matrix-based design, social media, globalization, interdependence in work. It's all sorts of forces that are driving it. But what we've seen analytically in here is that the general knowledge worker in people you support spend about 80 to 95% of their time on email, phone calls, or in meetings, virtual or face-to-face. And usually this is a low number. If I'm in a room with a group of executives and I say, how much time do you spend on these activities? They just groan. And somebody that's really pissed off immediately says 120%, right? You know, above the threshold there. And what we've seen is that number's gone up about 50%, at least, over the past 8 to 10 years, depending on the kind of worker you're looking at. Yet absolutely nobody is paying attention to it. Right? If I asked how many chief collaborative overload officers there were, in your companies, there'd be no hands that shoot up, right? It's just this invisible suck it up buttercup, which I'll take for the rest of my life with me now. And I'm in conferences all the time, or conversations with CEOs and leaders, that's actually, they don't say it that way, obviously, but that's the assumption. It's like, we're working hard, why isn't the next layer down working hard? And it causes them so many problems because they're not seeing, especially the manager layer in organizations, are just flat out overwhelmed. So here's what we're going to do to think about this together, because I'm thinking it's late in the conference, fourth day, fifth day, you're getting ready for the party tonight. Your blood sugar has to have dropped like my hairline, right, throughout all these things. So we're going to do an interactive piece here, and I want you to find somebody sitting next to you that you haven't been spending as much time with, and pair up quickly. So you got to turn around. This is the networking part of the show. Got to do it for me. I outweighed uncomfortable silences longer than you've ever seen. And find somebody close by, or make your way over. There we go. See, now you have a friend for the party tonight, too. And here's what I want you to think about. I want you to give me 1 minute of thought with somebody right by you and tell me, what's the thing that's killing you or your organization? What is it up here? It could be other things if you want, but is it email? Is it poor meeting management? Is it matrix-based designs? Toxic cultures where a couple of leaders generate fear and scare the hell out of everybody else, and so you're chasing things around? What is it? What is it that kills you in your organization? And then could you do anything about it? Right? So give me 1 minute of thought with your new best friend on this. What is it? What could you do about it? And then let's think about it. Well, they moved, which I didn't know was going to happen. Yeah. All right, we got it? So if I had a little bit more time or we had a voting technology or something like that up here, what I would typically ask people to do is say, tell me the single biggest thing that's killing you, right? And you'd be pretty surprised that it's different for everybody. You know, people immediately lock into it's just meetings or it's just email. But what you see is that it really depends on kind of the context of the work, the culture of the organization, design of things that are getting done. And so it tends to be a pretty even distribution of things that are kind of the single biggest killer for everybody out there. And why I think that matters and what makes it so cool to be working with Microsoft on this is it's very much an analytic problem, right? And the data sources that you have to be able to mine to see what is it at this point or in this region or whatever that's driving overload is the only way you're going to get to a good solution. So I've been at this for 20 years. I've talked directly with hundreds of companies around these ideas. And the idea that there is a single silver bullet solution to this, like a Slack or like something else that just gets rid of email, is completely inaccurate. It doesn't pull out, or get to the other things here. In fact, I get called all the time by these different collaborative vendors to support the application or talk about it. And I got a call from one, I'm not going to mention the name, and hopefully they're not in the room, but they said, Rob, we've got this magic solution for collaborative overload. And we built it in, it was a team-based, product, basically. And I said, oh, that's great, I'd be interested in hearing about it. And so this product, basically it made whoever was on that team, you get an unending flood of texts and emails and updates and everything that's going on, right? So everything that happens on that team, if you're a member of that team, it's just an onslaught. But the idea being that more connectivity is better, which we all know is not true, right? If I asked how many of you all wanted another email meeting or phone call in your lives, unless you're new, there's no hands that shoot up, typically. But we'll design these things for people, right? We'll kill them with more connectivity because that's the knee-jerk reaction. And so I said, well, where's the solution for overload on this, right? And they said, well, here's what we do, is we have a pause button, right? So yeah, that's what I thought too. I laughed a little bit. And it gets worse, right? This pause button then says, I guess it kind of raises your hand and you say, I'm not available right now or something like that, right? But then the thing that I just burst out laughing on is when you take that pause button off, everything that happened comes to you. Right? And I'm thinking somebody is way overpaid that came up with this solution because it doesn't really solve the problem, right? It's just moving the volume of work later into the night, and then if they're answering emails later at night, then it propagates out. You take something like what Microsoft can do is they can see, right? What's the behavior that's caused by somebody that's sending emails at 9 o'clock at night because they want to get stuff off their plate, and how does that propagate out? How does that start to give you a different set of ways of thinking about how you manage your own behaviors differently as a leader? And so what we've seen in this, I've done tons and tons of organizations where we'll go out and you can imagine these rich network analytics that let us see who's interacting with whom. And because of the way I go about it, I'll measure who's getting information from whom and then who needs greater contact with whom, right? So it's not just are you getting information, but is this somebody you need more connectivity with to be successful in your work? And this is one view that will produce a lot. So in this view, what you see on the vertical axis, these are the dots are people in a group. Obviously, I can't put names up here. The lines, the dots are people. The vertical axis is number of times a person sought out for information. And then the horizontal axis is number of times that people say, I have to have more of that person's time to be successful. Right? And so there's different ways we can get this, but you get the idea, right? You're looking at who are the people, especially in that upper right-hand quadrant, that are heavily sought out, so they're supporting a lot of other people in groups you care about, and others are saying, if I can't get more of their time, I can't be successful, right? I've got to have more of their bandwidth. Does that make sense, what I'm showing you here? And then you're thinking, what's the bubble size? Well, the bubble size is how happy they are, right? It's measures of are they satisfied with their jobs or their careers. And we always used to see this kind of bottom left-hand quadrant idea where people are happy until they figure out how bad it is to be there, right, in the organization. So the newcomers kind of all get along well early. What's really been interesting in our data sets is seeing the overload in the upper right-hand quadrant and the degree to which it's killing engagement. When we measure voluntary attrition, it used to be that just not getting connected enough was the biggest driver of turnover. Now what we see is it's bimodal, right? It's people that get overwhelmed in different ways. And then what happens, obviously, there's two bad things that happen when that happens, right? Either they leave and you lose people that are really productive. They're enabling a lot of others to get work done. Or they stay and they're pissed off, right? And they're disengaged and they're overwhelmed and they tend to spread kind of cultural disaffect. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? All right. With your buddy, Same buddy. I want to give you one more minute, and I want you to tell me, how would you solve this? What would you do with this problem? Because it's going on everywhere. I promise you it's going on everywhere. What could you do to solve this problem if it's one form of overload? And there's a couple of others that the analytics can show, but let's just pick this one for a second. Pair back up for me real quickly. Give me a couple ideas, and then we'll keep on here. Where should I go to then? All right, we got it. So let me draw you back again. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of time to seed a couple of thoughts here. And the knee-jerk reaction way too often is that more connectivity is better. If you go out and look at Amazon around what creates a successful network for a person, there's 80+ books out there, and it's always that bigger is better, right? And the knee-jerk reaction when it comes to collaboration, it's almost always we need more connectivity, more instantaneous connectivity. There's very little time spent on seeing where can we see overload and do things about it when it's impacting performance, right? When you start to see profiles like this, you're at a talent risk situation that can be very expensive, that traditionally is invisible. A lot of leaders can't predict who these people are. If I ask the leaders to guess and tell me who they are, they'll get 1 or 2 right, but they'll miss 5 or 6 that have emerged in ways that they can't see because of all that's happening over email or in other vehicles like that. And so this is one way of kind of making that analytically visible and then being able to do things about it, right? And so typically, the knee-jerk reaction everybody says is you got to find that person way up in the top right, and you go yell at them and tell them to delegate, right? They're the control freak that hasn't been delegating. And typically what that person does is find the very next most busy person and dump it on them, right? Because that's kind of how we're wired to think about the popular people pop up in our minds and all the discussions we have. And that's how you do it. And I watched this for years. You propagate the overload points in different ways through designs, through ways you're delegating, through things like that. If you have the analytics, you start thinking about it differently. You start saying, well, if I look at that 5 or 6 person group up there, how do we understand what are the routine informational requests they're getting that they don't really add value to anymore, things that have tracked with them over time, routine decisions they may be getting pulled into that they just don't need to be a part of, and are there portions of their role they can let go of, right? And so I'm not looking for stuff they'll fight me over. I'm looking to say what's the routine stuff that's accrued in the system that if you could then make somebody in the bottom left-hand group a go-to person on, you'd have a really magic effect, right? You take that overload off the overwhelmed people, and you're actually drawing in talent that you want to get connected to begin with, right? Now, obviously, this is purely sets of dots up here, but you can imagine when you're looking at groups, some of those interpretations are very, visible. And it's, again, a data-oriented way to look at that. Yeah?
I would say if you ask everybody in my company, or you studied everybody in my company, they'd all say they're in the top right.
Right.
So when you mention taking work off one person and taking it somewhere else, nobody's got any availability. How do you...
So I think you'd be surprised, like newcomers coming in. It depends on the group. So if people could hear that, the idea is we're all up in the top right, and we're all angry and burned out and tired, which is a bad place to be, right? And I'll come back to it for a second, especially on the individual stuff. But I think part of that problem is because you're not aware of what the possibilities might be to pull in sometimes. And it can be new players coming in to groups. I'd have to look specifically at the group and see, what that might be. But that's the idea here, and what the analytics start to let you do is not to persist overloading a small set of people, but really to think about what's the distribution and how are we handling that. Now, to also pick on that question a little bit, one of the things I've been focused on for the past 8 or 9 years is we will do plots like this where I'm measuring who are the people that are giving the greatest return and taking the least time in groups, right? So I'm plotting information, how many others are you enabling to get things done, and time is how much are you just draining people. And you can imagine we can plot that out, and in the bottom right-hand corner are the people that give the greatest value and take the least time, and we're really interested in what are they doing, right? How is it that they manage to be more successful in enabling others to get work done and not take more time? We don't really care about the upper left hand, right? Because the people that you see coming down the hallway and there goes an hour of your life you never get back. You're not really interested in that group so much, but really the bottom and trying to get a sense of what they do. And so, last several years we've interviewed over 200 of those people, 100 men, 100 women, to make sure that we're thinking about this on a gender split as well, because there are some kind of cool nuances there. And we'd go out and ask them, what do you do? These are 90-minute in-depth interviews. How are you managing your work in a way that enables you to be more successful? And the baseline idea that we're seeing is that if I can get people to do 3 or 4 things differently, managing their collaborative demands coming at them, they can get back about 18 to 24% of their time, collaborative time, which is almost all of work time for most people today. But it's a different 3 or 4 for everybody in the room, right? It's a different set of things you need to do depending on role, depending on the culture, the talent around you, availability, things like that. But the idea I want to leave you with is that there are ways, if we look at that, how are people getting back 18, 24% of their time, a first category, a first set of things they're doing is imposing structure into their work differently. So we find the more efficient collaborators are much more likely to have very clear objectives. They calendar strategically, so Friday night, Sunday night, they're much more likely to be calendaring for a week or 2 weeks out to make sure that things they need to get done are getting done. How many of you all put or block reflective time in your calendars? Time to get stuff done? It's a huge predictor of the more successful people. Chantrell was putting up all the distractions that come at us. Some of the psychologists show that even looking down at a text and back up is a 64-second loss. But we never experience it, right? We tell ourselves a story that never really experiences that. But that ability to kind of block time is a really big deal, or to adapt role and interdependencies. So, and there's different ways that we can go about doing that in big networks. So this is an example from one of the organizations we'd worked with, where a leader of this group, about 1,800 people, had 110 people coming to him frequently for information, another 78 that said we have to have more of his time. And he was just working to the ends of the earth, right? And actually getting overwhelmed, burning out, all sorts of negative things. And for him, it was a pretty easy thing, once that pain point is isolated, to see how do we shift portions of role away, decision rights, information access, and use that to cultivate new talent that they were trying to bring in. And then also behaviorally, how can we help him do certain things that lets him be more effective within the group, right? So the idea, I think one of the strengths of the network analysis, whether you choose to go down to a personal level or just stay at a team level, is that it really helps you to target, to see where there are opportunity points that can help us isolate out where we want to focus effort to shift demands or things like that. So one thing we see is roles that cause the problems. The second thing we see, a category of things that we see that creates overload. When I went into these interviews, I was completely convinced that it was all going to be, the enemy was going to be out there, right? It was all going to be time zones, nasty bosses, clients, and email, right, or meetings that we couldn't control. And what I came back with, and what we're seeing in the work, is that about 50% of it is actually how we choose to engage in different ways, right? So there's a certain group of people that get a sense of identity by being the man or the woman, the expert, and they drive things to them over time. There's another group of people that get a huge sense of identity by helping others. And so they tend to jump in to help, but then they become the path of least resistance and things come back to them in ways that are unproductive. By show of hands, if we were to look at that question that I just said, right, people that like to help. So we've done the interviews, and I put this out in a big diagnostic that's gone viral. We have about 20,000 responses to see, what are the practices. If you were to pick men or women, who do you think would more likely suffer from a desire to help? Men or women? By show of hands, let's start with women, and by show of hands, men. So roughly balanced in here, and that's kind of what the data shows. The knee-jerk reaction is, and if I were in a women's leadership conference, I promise you there would have been more hands go up on the first category. The knee-jerk reaction shows that it's not so much gender split, but it is a problem for both, at least so far, in terms of a tendency to jump in different ways. So there's things that have to do with how people manage how they show up in situations that are a big deal. And then a final set of things to do that I'll just leave one idea for you, one last brainstorm for me, and then I'll back away and we'll look at what Macy did, that really are very tactical things. So it's around how the culture of use on email, for example, or it's around calendaring. More efficient collaborators, for example, they're much more likely to give half time. If you're asked for an hour, you never give that hour, right? Just because that's what the calendaring tools do. You always say, I'll give you 30 minutes, and I've got a hard stop, real or imagined, right? And so that tendency just to, you imagine how much time you get back if you did that. We as humans can fill time in meetings like nothing else in the world. And what if you kind of leverage the reverse of that, just on kind of a knee-jerk basis there. So what we see when we look at that is there tend to be, a small set of things that drive channel efficiencies around meetings, emails, IM use, and then a small set of things that really are about how you choose to engage with others out there. And do you do things that shift how people take your time in ways that can actually help you buy back more effective time. So last thing, I've got 30 seconds on this one because I'm tight on time, but last thing with your buddy that you've been talking with, and I want you to tell me what's the one of these that could have the biggest impact for you in your organization? What do you think is the most important one in your organization? Brainstorm it for 30 seconds, and I'll tell you what we've been seeing anyway with the data. Okay? Very good. And then I'll transition you. All right, we got it? So show of hands, how many people said email? How many said email was the big one? All right, good, because that was number 6. So I got one-ish hand over there, a little bit, yeah. So that turns out to be, I mean, you talk to people, and that's the first thing they bemoan, right, is the email and everything that's going at them. And what we're finding is it's more the culture of use around it, right? And if you can use the analytics as a way to design, different kinds of ways it's being used, it has bigger effect. How many people said meetings? Yeah, number 1 predictor so far in terms of performance and also context where people are happy. Number 2 predictor that may be a little more subtle is I support virtual collaborations with rich mediums, so it's selecting the right tool at the right time, in essence. And the people that do that better tend to have a significant effect. And then what may be a little bit less obvious on the right-hand side is being someone that creates pull in networks. Turns out to be a really big deal. So in other words, they're not people that go and tell others why their idea is the best and why they're the smartest, but they're going out and asking a lot of questions and morphing what they know to the other people's issues, and they get drawn in different ways. They get greater engagement around them. There's a lot of positive things that happen. So the cool thing about this is, as you get the ideas we're going, is that it's not a silver bullet solution, right? It really is an analytic issue that you want to be applying some of the really amazing things that Microsoft can do to see how and where do you focus efforts, right, to have the biggest impact. It's not a game that's won by fixing one thing. It's almost always a game that's won by doing 4 or 5 things better on the margin that tends to get back time now. So let me hand it to Scott here, and oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Yep.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Okay. That was great. So we are, is my mic on? Yeah. Okay, so this is Rob's work and research, which is separate than ours, but I feel like a lot of what we are developing is taking a lot of the same ideas on and hoping that we can measure those things and then help have an impact on people's behavior around those things. And we've worked with several companies, as I mentioned earlier, on kind of trying to iterate toward a holistic solution to this problem. And for the last year or so, we've been working with Macy's. So Macy's, as you all know, is a super iconic brand that has a huge retail workforce, of course, which isn't something we'd slot into that knowledge worker category. But they also have a huge knowledge worker workforce because they have all their headquarters people and the people that need support. So we've been working with the Macy's Technology Organization, and I'll talk a little more about what they're facing. But first of all, they made a video for us. So I tested the video, and it worked. And let's see if I can get it to work again here. So we'll see what they have to say about it. If I do this. That's partway there.
Macy's is a traditional department store that is in a non-traditional world right now.
In this day and age where retailers come and go, we've had to innovate along the way.
We have a lot of work to do. We need to get things out of people's way so they can drive the innovation that is inherent in this organization.
It felt like there was too many meetings. We saw it in the engagement surveys, but people didn't feel like they could do anything about it.
Oh, need to meet with somebody? I'm just going to throw an hour on the calendar.
What could we do? How could we free up managers? How could we make them empower their employees and put the decision making in the right places?
We got really excited when we saw workplace analytics. It led us to be able to make better use of everyone's time and where we could actually potentially impact employee engagement.
So now when you can show people a graph that says, on average, developers are spending X number of hours in meetings, and everyone says, well, that's crazy. Now we can do something about it. It actually pushes them to want to change something.
As we think about workplace analytics and my analytics, I think there's lots of things that we could do with this. So I'm excited about it.
The possibility to merge it and really combine that data along with my analytics really sent us some great smoke signals about what could be improved in the organization.
Having the data helps me change my behaviors and helps me be more productive.
And just that empowerment, we saw a huge shift in how people talked about their time and how they use their time.
To the broader organization, My Analytics has shifted our way of thinking about how we get work done. Using My Analytics allowed people, both at the individual level, kind of looking at their own schedule and empowering them to say, hey, your time is your time, you own that.
For folks that didn't realize they were spending so much time, off hours, they've scaled back a little bit.
My analytics has definitely dramatically improved my ability to manage both my reports as well as the projects that I'm involved with.
Every time that we look at something, we're looking for a way to be much more effective, much more efficient. And workplace analytics has allowed us to accomplish that.
Thanks for watching that. So you heard, I guess, probably a lot of words about stuff they were doing, but I will walk you through for like 5 minutes exactly what the steps were that they went through to achieve that kind of positive feeling about the program. So first of all, as I mentioned, we're working with their technology organization. So this is a group that's headquartered in San Francisco. So this is probably, I guess, probably the most competitive labor market in the whole world, competing for really, really expensive and critical talent that they need to be able to, as they mentioned, not kind of fade away into irrelevance and die along with retail. But so for them, they really wanted to both attract people and make them feel good about their work and be sure that they were putting them into a really positive experience so that they could be really productive with the people that they had. So they used workplace analytics to try to understand kind of what are the opportunities to change. And they paired workplace analytics with employee engagement surveys to be able to understand how people's kind of felt experience was. Then they used My Analytics, the personal analytics product, in a combination with a program that they developed in-house called the Time is Money program to help people kind of focus their reason for engaging in the program. And then they used workplace analytics to measure the outcome of this program and make sure that it was actually making a difference at the organizational level. And then individuals use My Analytics to track their own progress on this and track their own goals. So I'll walk you through each of those steps. So first of all, in the diagnostic process, this is a selection of the metrics that kind of come out of the box with workplace analytics that we'll typically look at when we're trying to diagnose an overload problem. So we look at how people maintain their relationships inside the organization, how much time they're spending in emails and meetings with other people, how big their networks are, and how diverse and broad their networks are, whether the networks are growing, how efficient they are, and what kind of groups they're most dependent on. And then especially we look at managers, frontline managers and second level managers, because they have so much of an influence on the rest of the organization in how they're able to mentor or coach their employees, how central they are to their teams, and how they unblock their teams and remove bottlenecks and facilitate interaction with the rest of the organization for their teams. And then we'll often take a targeted look at specific processes. Especially like for this team, a technology team will look at release processes and processes that have to move through a lot of teams and like kind of do some deep dives on those to understand what might be the root cause of some of the issues. So taking a look at that, they also paired it up, as I mentioned, with employee engagement surveys. So they had an employee engagement survey that they'd run at the end of 2016. And so we looked at the 6 months of metrics in the time leading up to that survey, so that we were actually able to use data to predict who would become engaged or disengaged as a result of their collaboration behavior. So looking at those metrics on the previous slide, we figured out which ones of those were leading indicators of employee dissatisfaction on different questions. So the 4 areas that they chose to focus this program were around meeting sprawl. So they had a lot of large meetings with too many redundant functions or levels attending the meeting, and unclear roles and responsibilities in the meeting, and they just wanted to shrink that problem. They wanted to increase focus time, especially for engineers whose job is to sit down and write code. They need to have good chunks of time where they can get into kind of a mental flow state and not be consistently interrupted and not feel like there's too many urgent requests on their time so that they can't actually get their core work done. As well as for managers who need time to plan. Even though their job is much more interactive and collaborative, they still need that time to be strategic and planful without being always in firefighting mode. They wanted to reduce after-hours workload, so it's important for them to maintain people's healthy balance, and even though they work in kind of cycles and at times you do end up having after-hours work, it's important to not make that. There's tons of research that shows that if you've got a constant extra long work week, you're going to burn out, you're going to be dissatisfied, and you're not going to be bringing your most productive self to work. And then last one, they just kind of wanted to improve everyone's general hygiene around how they collaborated and make sure that everyone was thoughtful about the amount of time they were taking from each other. So that they would start this conversation. Because the thing about these problems is you can't be the lone kind of cowboy who's solving the overload problem just on yourself, because it's a network problem. Everybody has to be thinking about it. And so to make that happen, they came up with this term of time is money, and there's a lot of different organizations I've worked with have got a different term that they're using, like work like a human and truly human, and other kind of names that they're branding this. They have an executive sponsor, and they say we actually are going to have a shared group conversation about this problem. And so they have a change management person who conducts a session, and the teams opt in, big teams who are saying we all want to deal with this problem, and they come together and they select a team, kind of the teams as a group decide they're going to have a norm and a goal to meet, so that they all understand that they're all working on this goal together. And in that session, which you can see some of in the video, they're debuting for these employees their My Analytics dashboards. And so people are finally seeing these numbers around their meeting, focus, email time, and how much they're working after hours. And it's a big eye-opener experience for people to sit and look at this. And I heard from one of the groups, like, people will kind of look at each other, and one person said, I spend more time with you than I do with my wife, because it's got all of these, you can quantify people's relationships and the amount of time they're spending together and whether they're kind of healthy relationships. So it's a super interesting way for people to sit down and set their goals. And again, this data is for their eyes only. This is their personal and private data, but people are excited to be able to talk about it generally. So that change management program, people are able to measure their own progress in their own personal data, and then we will aggregate, de-identify the data so we can track the progress on the group level. And the beautiful thing is we have control groups, because we have groups who did not participate in the program, and so we can actually take full responsibility for the change. The program can take full responsibility for the change that's happening, because we have this fairly rigorous way of measuring it. So one piece of progress was around focus time. So people are calendaring, as Rob mentioned, intentionally calendaring time to focus. And you can see that this gray area represents the 12 weeks that the program was underway. And so the groups started calendaring much more focus time. But then when the program ended, that trend continued. They were maintaining the change and even continuing additional change after the end of the program. So we felt like that showed a lot of support for this idea and adoption of this habit. Second nice result that they had was around organizational load. So we have this metric we call the organizational load index, and what it does is it counts up the amount of hours that we calculate you taking from the organization in terms of the emails that you send and the meetings that you schedule. And so, of course, no one wants this to go to zero, but we do want everyone to be very, very thoughtful about how they're using other people's time and stop pretending that time is free, because it's very much not. And so the teams that chose to participate in this one were these fairly critical central teams who were already placing a whole lot of load on the organization because they were responsible for some pretty big things. And you can see that the time went down, and again, it continued, that trend continued, the improvement was maintained and even continued to get better after the end of the program. So that felt like a great kind of quantitative outcome. And what we heard from the people who were participants in the program was that, these are metrics that are wonderful areas to improve. They're not ones where you want to get to zero and you're perfect. You want to always kind of keep an eye on these, but they wanted more and more ways of being thoughtful about their productivity and finding new ways to improve. And they did a survey about this program and found that this was leading to an increased perception of Macy's being an innovative place and a flexible place to work, and that there was a lot of great qualitative feedback about people being very deliberate and planful, people thinking more clearly about where they're going to decline and what they're going to delegate, and just having a much better kind of way of thinking about their own productivity. And there was good quantitative improvement where we were seeing that on average, people reduced their meeting hours by 4 hours per person per week. So they took 10% of their time back from meetings that clearly must not have been important because they were able to take that time back. They turned around and turned that time into focus time. And so they were spending that on deep work where they were being more thoughtful. And then as a result of doing that, so they had at this time, the business cycle during these 12 weeks was increased demand because they had some releases, I think, that they were dealing with. But they were able to maintain or decrease the amount of after-hours work that people were doing. So they were becoming more productive in the time that they were spending at work and not having that spill over into their personal time. And then on average, people reduced their organizational load that they were putting on the rest of the org by 50%. So, so we love that pattern, that if you're bringing data, you're changing the conversation about what the problem is, you're helping people change their behavior, and then you're able to actually measure the impact of the change that you're making and make sure that it's actually making a difference. So that's what we're working on over the next several months in the two products, and Scott's going to show you a little bit of a preview of the way that we're thinking about that.
Great, thanks. So I'm a program manager on the workplace analytics team, and one of the things that I focus on is trying to capture the user requirements and make sure that they're fully reflected in the product. I'm happy to share with you today some of the early thinking we have around a tighter integration of workplace analytics and my analytics to form this virtuous feedback loop to empower organizations to address problems which were very difficult in the past. So Chantel just walked you through a great example of a case study at Macy's. It was wonderful sitting in on a lot of their sessions and seeing the work that they did. What we're trying to do with workplace analytics and my analytics is put together a closed loop system that empowers you and enables that entire process from end to end. So with the Macy's project, there were a lot of manual steps that required a fair amount of effort on their part. They did a great job with that. We're trying to improve that overall efficiency in delivering those types of programs. So at a high level, the general concept here is you can do your analysis and diagnostics in workplace analytics to identify specific problems within your organization, such as collaboration overload. But that's actually just the first step in the journey. To actually solve that problem, you need to change the behavior of your workforce, and that's where my analytics comes into play. So once you've done your analysis in workplace analytics, you can package up the insights and the prescriptive guidance and deploy that throughout your entire organization to the personal dashboards of each person's My Analytics page. Once you've done that, because of this tight integration between workplace analytics and My Analytics, you can then begin to monitor the progress and measure the overall impact of the program on your ROI. So that's essentially what we're trying to do, is create this closed loop feedback system. So what I'd like to do now is walk you through a few screenshots. Now these are still very conceptual in nature, they're fairly high level, but I'd love to get your feedback. If you want to stick around for a few minutes afterwards, I'd love to engage with you on discussions along those lines. And if you're interested in being part of our early adopter program, we'd love to have a conversation along those lines as well. So here we are in workplace analytics. This is the diagnostics phase, and a lot of times this starts out with a company establishing some hypotheses about specific problems within their organization. And with that, it's a bit of a peeling the onion, trying to understand where the real problems lie, what's the nature of those problems, who's involved. And so we can apply various filters to slice through the data to whittle down to the specific nature of where the particular problems are. Now with that, we intend to also provide highlights on the data so that we can help guide the analyst in their discovery process, and it's not just a bunch of trial and error. And with this particular example, we're focusing on meeting hours. This tends to be one of the more common problems that customers come to us with. And the idea here is we want to identify the particular groups within an organization that are having some problems with too many meeting hours. And this is just a simplified example here. In this case, it's the design organization that is an outlier relative to the rest of the population. But once we've gone through this analysis and diagnostics phase, we can package up that information and put it together into a solution which we can then deploy out to the rest of the organization through their My Analytics dashboard. So hit the submit button, essentially. And now we're looking at the individual dashboard, the My Analytics dashboard for a particular person in the organization. And through this, we can set the context of the overall initiative through a nice greeting page explaining the nature of the program and why it's important that they need to pay attention to this particular thing. But I do want to emphasize that it's not just about the tooling. There's also a very important human element to this overall change management initiative. It's kind of two sides of the same coin. One side of it is the tooling, the systems that enable and empower your organization to actually affect these change. And the other one is the human element, the coaching, the encouragement, the teaching of best practices that needs to go on a regular basis to motivate people to actually change their behavior. It's a very difficult problem, and I think we've all experienced that at some time in our lives. So we also try to provide some framework here to provide coaching around best practices, changing your habits like booking time ahead or shutting off Skype. And depending upon the nature of the problem that you're experiencing and the solution that you've deployed, we provide different types of habits. One of the other cool things here is we can start to show goals or benchmarks within the organization. So One of the questions we get asked all the time is, how do I compare relative to a peer group within my company? So because of the closed loop system, we actually show you exactly how you're doing relative to the rest of the organization and how you measure up to the expectations of your company. And then the last part of this is just providing additional resources for people who actually want to dig in and start to really teach themselves about better practices around time management or meeting effectiveness. There's a wide variety of resources that people can draw upon, just making that readily available at their fingertips. So once you've deployed the program, it's been running for a while, the next step is to actually measure how it's going. And so we'll provide another dashboard available to the person in workplace analytics. You can think of this as kind of a control tower, monitoring the overall progress of the initiative. And from within this dashboard, you'll be able to see how the behavior of your organization is actually changing. Are things getting better? Are people going to fewer meetings? Are you using your time more effectively? And then you can immediately take course corrective actions if you don't see the appropriate trend taking place. So it's this really quick feedback loop that we're establishing here. You can also begin to identify particular audience groups to see if they're improving relative to the average or not, and then maybe encourage certain other behaviors if they're not moving in the direction that you want them to be. So those are the main steps in the process. I'm going to turn it back over to Chantrell.
That's actually, that's all we had prepared for you, so we have a good amount of time of Q&A. We also have some links. I put up here a map to our booth in case you wanted to see a demo. I think the booths are closing at like 4. So it's almost enough time to walk there. But you can see demos of both My Analytics and Workplace Analytics that enable a lot of this stuff already, and talk to the product managers who are there. And then we have a website that's kind of unique for a Microsoft product. We have a specific website called insights.office.com where we've got a lot of what we've published in Harvard Business Review and the coverage from Wall Street Journal and a lot of more like business type publications. Kind of pulling in a lot of the science of this what we think of as a brand new field of workplace analytics. So we would really love it if you have any questions. Of course, you know how to get in touch with Microsoft. But we were all glad to take some Q&A now publicly or privately. So if anyone has any questions. No?
Hi. One of the slides where you had it was the professor, I forgot your name, but one of the slides it talked about.
It's just Rob is good. I hear Professor Cross and I look around for my dad, right?
Rob. It talked about the challenges, and as I looked down the list, one of them was about leadership, and I thought my comment to my partner was that leadership seemed to be perhaps the root cause of too many meetings or overloads or all these things. I didn't know if you had any more insights into that or commentary.
Yeah, I think you know, sometimes, so one of the neat things about network analysis, and you have to figure out which level you want to go to, right? There's an element of you that has to be thinking this is creepy if you go down too far. So you can keep it at levels of abstraction that keep, you know, you from seeing specific names, sometimes depending on what you want to see. I think you know, as you can get comfortable with it and give value back to each person, so I've been at this for 20 years, and a lot of organizations have taken this on and done a lot with it. What I find is the more you give value back to each individual, then the more people are actually very comfortable seeing more and more and wanting to take action and improve on it. So that's one just overall kind of thought, that you can play at multiple levels. It doesn't have to be going down to the bottom. When I do play at the individual level and we're looking to see where the opportunities for improvement are, it is incredibly common to see that, you know, for example, in other places I've mapped fear or intimidation, literally, because I'll use maybe a survey or something like that to see it. And what you find is you really don't have a culture of fear in this place. You actually have 20 leaders that don't quite know how to exert their influence well. And they're not as evil as they're portrayed, but they're stuck, right? And then you've got 20 experts that love to show how smart they are by showing how smart they are. Right? Rather than asking questions and drawing people to them, they do it in a way that's unproductive. So, you know, I think the strength of this stuff is that as long as it's handled well, right? You can't use it to say, why is this person on the edge? Because that's not productive, right? But if it's handled well, you can really telescope in and then say, we don't have a huge culture problem, we have something that's tractable all of a sudden to be able to do things about it. And generally what I see is, you know, there are leaders that are exemplars in almost anything we're looking at. whether it's overload or creating purpose at work or things. There's leaders that are exemplars, and then there's leaders that aren't. And we're not trying to isolate who they are, but we're trying to say, how do we learn from the exemplars and help, the next layer, bump up in different ways. So I don't know if that good, yeah.
I'd also add that, the kind of one of the change management basics is getting executive sponsorship, and we've seen that that's super important. People aren't really nobody wants to have I'm the work-life balance person over here, even though my executive doesn't support that concept for me. So if their role model, it's really important to them to role model, and it's really worth doing to them if they can see the results are happening. And that's part of what is going into the My Analytics product, where Scott mentioned links and resources and coaching. One of the kinds of links or resources that you can put there is actually a personal message from leadership at that organization, so that the change is much more real for the people who are being asked to change. Yeah.
What is the first question is, what is the engagement model? I mean, is it this is like a service that we need to buy on top of our existing Office 365? And how long does that take to get some valuable results? And the second question is, does this also measure, this is a lot of personal efficiency stuff, does it also measure the level that you are collaborating? And that's what my challenge is I have to measure that we're collaborating like crazy, not collaborating in every direction. So can this also measure like SharePoint and Teams and all those other products that we're now adopting within the organization and show that the one-to-many sharing aspect of SharePoint, is it also measuring those aspects into the numbers?
So the new signals are coming in, on a regular basis, but it takes some time for each of them. So right now we mostly focus on email and calendar, since we get that 20 hours per person per week, but those are all in the pipeline. And it's pretty non-trivial to turn those signals into time use and network. So it takes some time, but yes, they're definitely coming. The earlier question was, I'm sorry, I lost the first question. How do you get it? Yeah. Actually, I'm really not super well practiced in answering that.
Take that one. So there are two questions I think nested in there. One is the cost as well as the engagement model. So we can talk about cost after the fact, but Workplace Analytics is an add-on to all the SKUs. As far as the engagement model goes, is once you sign on to take the product, we get you hooked up with a fast track program, which basically is a white glove service that gives you early training and onboarding coaching as to how to use the tool effectively, as well as the type of data that should go into it and how to best structure and pull in additional information to augment the email and calendaring information in the system. So we try to get you up and running as quick as possible in the system.
And the cool thing is that the data is already there, right? So when you turn it on, you've got 6 or 12 months of history, depending on how your archiving is working. So it turns on pretty quickly because no one's having to do data entry. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what definition you used for focus time? And specifically what I mean by that is, did people set aside time generically, or did they set aside, I'm going to work on project X at this time?
Mm-hmm. So I think that to do that specific diagnostic in Macy's, we were looking for people to use keywords like focus and other things that are similar to that, and to calendar things that are just for themselves only. But in general, what we look for, without having to tell anyone to use any kind of keywords, we're just looking for 2-hour chunks of white space on your calendar, with the thinking and some amount of ethnography and research being that 2 hours is enough time to get something to eat, run to the bathroom, and have a long focused time of work. But that's all very configurable, so you can set it to look for whatever you might like to look for and aggregate that and quantify it for a group of people. Yeah?
Hello, yes. I was thinking, how much of this is actually looking at the numbers, and how much of the improvement, this being the improvement in workers' time and concentration, and how much of it is like the Hawthorne effect or the observation effect?
Mm-hmm. I think that kind of the definition of the Hawthorne effect is you can't quite tell the difference between whether people are doing it because they're observed or doing it because they truly think. The Hawthorne effect, for anyone who doesn't know, is like the effect they found when they first were studying task workers in a factory, and it turned out that just being watched was what was making them more productive, as opposed to any interventions they were doing, like bright lights or dim lights or anything like that. Just knowing knowing that they're being watched. Now, it's really important when you're talking with people about this data to make it very clear that they personally are not being watched. The group is being, is being watched, and also to get that buy-in through the process that makes people say, I don't have to participate in this if I don't want to. Completely optional for me. No one is going to know if I participate or don't participate. But when your whole team is working toward a goal, then that can be pretty motivating also. And also, you get a network effect. If I'm working on a goal of not working after hours and you're sitting next to me and I'm out of my desk at that time, then chances are you're going to feel a little bit less obligated to stay. So people will really, really change their behavior. I think just as strong as the Hawthorne effect is like just the peer influence and the fact that we all like copy the people that we're working with, and there's very much a kind of a hive mind that is shaping our behavior more than we realize.
So, and I would also suggest that that's one angle of where you're looking for a behavioral change. There's other views of this that start to pinpoint where decision rights aren't well allocated, or where you don't have talent. Like your point earlier of what if we don't have people to turn to. This is actually one of the insights you start to pick up, is people will think they've hired 10 skill sets, 10 people in skill set A, I'll call it, right? And you think you're good from a human capital standpoint, but then you find that the network is coherent around 2 and they're underutilizing 6. Right, when you start looking at the collaborative demands differently. So the solutions don't just have to be behavioral. They can be organizational, they can be talent-based, and you can really see it's not just kind of a Hawthorne effect. But I would also really echo that idea of with almost all this stuff, you've got to get the group to do it, right? And that's one of the strengths. It's not just one person that says, I'm going home on time. It's a set of people that kind of reinforce it there.
There's no other questions, okay. Do you believe that a lot of people are grabbed onto the likes of Teams is going to solve everything and it's going to streamline? Obviously, it's going to take out the copy and paste actions and the consolidation actions that so many people suffer from and take up so much time. But you still ultimately have the same amount of information coming in, so you still have the same amount of information points regardless of it's on an email or Teams. Do you think there's an over-reliance that Teams is going to solve world hunger?
I think that my personal opinion is that a lot of what you end up seeing is, if I show up to a meeting and I'm like, this is a poor use of my time, it's not well run, it's not well organized, that's not because people are so bad at everything in life. It's because there's probably some root cause. Maybe there's a strategic reason, like misalignment about this project, and the reason we can't make a decision is because somebody is not aligned with the strategy of the organization or something like that. So I think that the more information you're surfacing for people, they're going to have to figure out their own ways of managing that information flow and that overload, but hopefully by making them more thoughtful about what they're doing and why, they can start to use their human intelligence that machines cannot replicate to really diagnose the root cause of the problems that they're seing. And that's just my opinion.
I think there is a knee-jerk reaction a lot of times at Teams. I mean, that's the tool that people have, right, in their head, and that's what they've been taught for 20 years. And yet the Google study showed that it wasn't the team, it was the network, right, in the team and reaching out that was the driver. And I've seen that over and over again when we look at what outpredicts team performance. And so I think it's kind of an inflection point. Like, these ideas are getting cemented, and they will lead to people making different decisions over time and starting to think about, well, gosh, if I dump that person on the team, what is it disrupting over here? What's it driving here that I haven't been able to see before as a leader? So I think it's an interesting, we're at a point where the data is going to start to inform things differently.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a roadmap for which of the signals are going to come in next? SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, something that we'll be able to refer to?
Yes, there is a roadmap, and actually we're working on it right now.
Is there a roadmap for the roadmap?
I can't say with confidence exactly where those signals will land, but we've heard this time and again from customers. It is high on the priority list. It's just a matter of us figuring out what the sequencing of work needs to be and then formalizing the roadmap. But we do intend to share that.
And as Scott mentioned, we work really closely with our customers. We don't kick something out to 1 billion people at once the way most Microsoft products actually are able to do. So we started as a startup like that, just very hand in hand with very senior people at our customers. And so it's worth having a conversation if there's some specific interest and seeing what you can get from email and calendar alone.
Thank you.
Okay, one last one.
Hi. Regarding the calendar metrics, does it have any smart thinking about which meetings are in the measurement? Because I'm thinking that if there are meetings where several people are included in the meeting, that's a meeting, but otherwise
Yep.
I either block my calendar or I go to get my kids. I could put in a meeting, but it's not actually a meeting, so.
Yeah, so we have an out-of-the-box built-in classifier that will typically, it's different for different companies, but usually around half of meetings are going to be excluded from the beginning because they don't look like business relevant meetings. So we're looking for people like where there's nobody else on the invitation, or where you've got keywords like it's my kid's soccer game or pick up my mom or something like that, where you don't, that's not business relevant. We have no business looking at that data, right? Like that's your own personal use of your calendar. And so we're automatically going to exclude that. And then the classification is very configurable. So every organization might want to look at things in a really different way. Some might have, you know, like a classic example is like Nike is a company that does soccer for a business reason, right? So you can't throw out all those. So that's all like really specific to the business, and there's some AI that helps with it, but there's also just basic ability for an analyst to go through and classify how they want. All right, I think we're all out of time. Thank you so much.
We'll hang around up here.